Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove, and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation that I received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's No Filter Q&A with question number 1. Nick, do you think it's possible to get fit in just 15 minutes each day? Honestly, no. I mean, you can increase muscular endurance, you can improve cardiovascular endurance, but are you going to really see a significant difference in your aesthetics, like a whole physique transformation? Probably not. Okay. And I'll tell you why. When you think of the body as a whole, right? And you think of all the muscle groups there are. You've got your chest, you've got your back, you've got your biceps, your triceps, your shoulders, your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, your glutes. It goes on and on. Spending 15 minutes each day working on just say one muscle group and then going to the next, the day after that, the day after that, you're still not giving it enough volume to really stimulate muscle growth. Okay. As I said, you might increase muscular endurance and you most likely will improve cardiovascular health as well because you are doing something fit and healthy for your body. But you're not going to see substantial changes in your physique or your performance if you're playing, let's say, tennis or basketball, soccer, whatever it is, right? Um, any athlete will tell you to become the best at your sport, you have to put in hours and hours of practice. So the same thing when it comes to your health and fitness, you have to put in hours and hours of practice in the gym, in the kitchen, right? So that's the thing I talked about with bodybuilding. It's not just something that you can do in the gym and then leave and say, oh, forget about that. No, it stays with you day in and day out, right? And when I talk about bodybuilding, I don't mean those guys on stage. If you're in a gym building your body, guess what? You're a bodybuilder. So it stays with you. It stays with you when you go home. What are you going to eat for breakfast? What are you going to eat for lunch? What are you going to eat for dinner, right? How are you going to space out your meals? Are you going to meal prep, right? What are you going to supplement with? So all these things are factors when it comes to creating a physique that you want to create and you want to look good and feel good about yourself. Okay. So I don't understand when I hear people talk about these 15-minute workouts. I mean, who doesn't have 45 minutes in a day to work out 3 to 4 times a week? Really, there's 24 hours in a day. So when people say it only takes 15 minutes to get in a workout, no, if you want to get in a good workout, in my opinion, you need to be in the gym from anywhere from 40 to 60 minutes. Okay. Because then you can train properly. And when I talk about 40 to 60 minutes, most people know what I'm talking about here. I mean, going all out, right? You're not talking on your phone. You're not cruising Instagram. You're not playing on TikTok. You're focusing on your sets, on your reps, and the sequence of your exercises. Okay. But that to me is a great way to not just improve your health and fitness, but also to develop a physique, okay? A physique that you are proud of, right? That you feel confident in, right? So I always tell people if you really want to improve your health, better your fitness, and build a physique that you're confident and proud of, you should be in the gym at least 3 to 4 times a week, 45 to 60-minute sessions, making sure you're doing high volume, high reps, minimal rest periods, and that's how you're going to do it. Okay. 15 minutes a day, not enough. Like I said, you will improve your health for sure. You definitely will because listen, even going for a walk for 15 minutes a day is going to help improve your cardiovascular endurance, right? And if you're lifting weights, yeah, that's going to improve your muscular endurance, but you're not going to notice substantial changes in your physique or your health or your fitness. Minimal, probably. Okay. Next question. Nick, what is the most effective workout of all time? Um, well, I don't know if you would call it a workout, but I'm a big advocate of bodybuilding training splits, right? So that's what I find to be the most effective way to train. For the simple reason that with bodybuilding, there's no ballistic movements. You can develop a training split that makes sense. You're not going into the gym day in, day out doing the same movements. You're not doing these power movements where people get injured. You're not doing CrossFit where people get injured. You're focusing on those higher reps and in high volume, as I mentioned in the first question, training. And what that does, it helps stimulate muscle growth and it preserves your joints, ligaments, and tendons. So, in my opinion, the best workout the best way to work out would be to follow a bodybuilding split, okay? Because bodybuilding splits have been proven time and time again for longevity, right? You look at all the guys who were bodybuilding back in the 80s, a lot of them to this day are still doing it now, and they're fine, they're healthy, their joints are good, their ligaments are good. You look at a lot of these CrossFitters and these powerlifters, they get injured in their late 20s, early 30s. I've seen it. So to me, it's bodybuilding will always be the number one way to work out if you're thinking long term and you want to remain injury free. And I know people out there will say I'm biased because I used to be a bodybuilder. I used to get up on stage, but to this day, I still call myself a bodybuilder because I still do go to the gym every day and train. And I only take a day off when I actually feel like I need to take a day off. Okay, I listen to my body. But if I'm putting together a proper training split, I'm not at risk of overtraining. And I went into this last week with overtraining, so I won't go too far into this again. But I truly believe that if you train with intelligence and you approach each workout methodically and you put together a proper training split, which includes proper sequencing of exercises, you'll never overtrain. Okay. But the problem is with people like CrossFit and powerlifters, they're doing the same ballistic movements 3, 4 times a week. And that to me is overtraining. And that's putting a lot of pressure on your joints, your tendons, and your ligaments. And that's why you see a lot of these people get injured. Okay. So if you're looking as a whole for long-term results, bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is the way to go. And I stand by it because tried and true, I mean, knock on wood, I've never had a serious injury. And I like to think I train pretty hard in the gym, but I've never had an injury that limits me from doing a certain exercise or certain movement ever. Okay. And I attribute that to following a bodybuilding type of training split. Okay. Okay. Nick, are there any specific foods that help you build muscle faster? I had a similar question to this. I think it was last week or the week prior. So to answer this question, the way I look at nutrition when it comes to building muscle is you want to make sure that your diet consists of primarily lean proteins, complex carbohydrates, and healthy fats. Now, if you find foods that contain all three or just one or two of those macronutrients, you're good. Okay. What you want to do is you want to make sure you stay away from your simple carbs, right? Your simple sugars, your trans fats, right? Limit your saturated fats. You can still consume saturated fats, but limit them. You don't want to have too much saturated fats. So as long as you're following a nutritional plan that includes those three macronutrients I talked about, the complex carbohydrates, the healthy fats, and the lean proteins, you're going to build muscle. And you're going to build muscle while keeping body fat levels low. So I could list off, and I think I did actually last week, list off tons of healthy foods that you could stock your fridge full of that will help build muscle. Omega-3 eggs, avocados, peanut butter, cod, tilapia, salmon, ground turkey, chicken breasts, lentils, beans, kidney beans. There's tons, tofu. There's tons of foods out there that will help you build muscle, but it's important to remember to stay away from the foods that will not only not help you build muscle, but will actually slow down the muscle building process. And what I mean by that is when people are having foods like, say, frosted flakes or, a muffin for breakfast. Well, it's not just the amount of sugar and the amount of trans fats that's in that food that's going to translate to how your physique looks, but it's also how you're going to feel. If you're having something for breakfast that's high in sugar, guess what? Your blood sugar levels are going to go through the roof and then you're going to crash. And what's going to happen? You're going to feel very lethargic. So let's say you have a lunch hour workout. What kind of energy are you going to be putting into that workout? You're going to feel tired. You're going to feel slow, right? You're going to need a pick-me-up. So you're going to go to Starbucks and get one of those, venti espressos that's loaded with sugar, right? So that's another thing. And then it's a vicious cycle that continues on and on again, right? So it's not a good idea to be loading up your diet with full of processed foods, simple sugars, simple carbs, right? Trans fats, because it's not just about how you look, but it's how you feel. Okay. So if you're feeding the body properly with those healthy fats I mentioned, the complex carbohydrates and the lean proteins, you won't have any problems with feeling lethargic. You'll actually feel good all day. And I've talked about this in the past, how I don't rely on stimulants to get me through a workout. I do like to have a coffee. I have one coffee a day and that's it. But I find that what gets me through my workouts and what gets me through my day is my diet. Okay. And making sure that I am eating the right foods. So you want muscle building foods? Look for those macronutrients, complex carbs, healthy fats, lean proteins. That's how you build muscle. Okay. Okay. Nick, how much protein does a person really need to build muscle effectively? Okay, so good question, and this will vary on the person. Okay, this will depend on multiple factors. One being their body weight, one being their goal. Do they need to lose weight? Do they need to gain weight? One being their gender, male versus female, right? And one will also be their activity level. How often are they in the gym? Right. So if you have someone who's training 3 times a week in the gym versus someone who's training 6 times in a week in the gym, the person who's there 6 times a week is most likely going to need more protein. Okay. But the thing with protein, and I've talked about this in the past, actually, I mentioned it, I think, a few weeks ago on the channel, was I'm a firm believer that protein is the most overrated macronutrient. Okay. People always talk about protein when it comes to building muscle. And yes, you need protein to build muscle, but you also need healthy fats. That's essential. Okay. So what's I've talked about in the past how I neglected taking healthy fats, and that was a big mistake on my part. I didn't start really noticing changes in my physique, so I started incorporating more healthy fats into my diet. And then I really started to see the changes in my physique. Okay. So carbs aren't necessary. However, I do like to use carbohydrates, especially for pre and post workout to fuel glycogen storages. Okay. But they're not macronutrients that are essential, right? The macronutrients that we know are essential for survival are healthy fats. We need healthy fats for our brain and protein because we do need protein for our muscle. But for muscle synthesis, you need a combination of protein with fat. Okay. So it's difficult for me to give you an exact answer and tell you how many grams of protein you should have. However, the formula I like to use, if I'm working with someone who, let's say, wants to put on weight, what I'll do, say that person is 200 pounds. I'll take their weight and I'll times it by 1.5, and that'll give me the amount of grams of protein I want to give that person. Okay. If that person is not putting on weight, I won't necessarily increase their protein. I might increase their fats, or I might increase their complex carbohydrates for those meals surrounding their workout, just so that they have more glycogen in their reserves and they can lift more weight. So that's a strategy I use depending on the person. If I'm working with someone who's trying to lose weight, I'll typically drop it down to their body weight times 1. Okay. And so if someone weighs 150 pounds, I'll give them 150 grams of carbs. But again, there's multiple factors to take into consideration here. So it's not a one size fits all answer, but that's the basic formula I start everyone off with. And then I play with those numbers as we progress on a week to week basis. And that's where I make my weekly revisions with all my online clients. Okay. And that's crucial because if you stick with the same plan day in, day out when it comes to your diet, what happens when you hit a plateau? You're going to become stagnant with your results. So it's important to switch up your diet. It doesn't have to be every week, but at least every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, or whenever you hit a plateau. Okay. And that's when you have to start rotating your macronutrients. As far as the training program is concerned, if you're on a good training program and you're feeling it in the gym and everything's good, leave it alone. Okay. I can't stress that enough. Leave it alone because I see so many people trying to constantly change up their training program in the gym while neglecting their diet. It's usually the diet that needs to be changed. If you're on a good training program, you're following a good training split, you have chest and back day 1, shoulders, biceps, triceps day 2, and you're doing legs day 3. If you're doing a 3-day split, 5-day split, whatever it is, chest, back, shoulders, arms, legs, take 2 days off. If you're following a good training split, just make sure you're fueling your body properly with the proper nutrients. Okay. Okay, next question. Nick, are there any exercises that I can do to get rid of my love handles? Love handles, also known as the intercostals and obliques, those are the muscles that your love handles are covering. Very common, especially common with men. Okay. That's an area where a lot of men, some women too, but a lot of men tend to put on their weight in the midsection, right? And it's an area you've got to be careful for. Okay. Now, here's the thing, there's no such thing as spot reduction. Okay, so you can't look at one part of your body and say, I want to lose fat in that one spot. So I'm going to do, in your case, it's your love handles, intercostals, obliques. So I'm going to do 1,000 side bends, 1,000 side crunches, 1,000 twists every day. That's not going to do it. Okay. Now, if you're doing intercostal and oblique work, you're going to make those areas much stronger, but you're not going to get rid of the fat. Okay. In order to get rid of the fat, you need to combine a combination of resistance training with cardiovascular training and making sure that your diet's in check. You don't necessarily need to be in a caloric deficit. I've talked about that in the past. I'm a firm believer that if you're weight training on a regular basis to lose body fat, you don't necessarily have to be in a caloric deficit. You just have to make sure you're training with the utmost amount of intensity while fueling your body again, as I mentioned in the last question, with the proper nutrients. Okay. So that's why I don't count calories. So when it comes down to losing weight in any area of your body, unfortunately, that comes down to your genetics. Okay. So when I work with people online, I talked about this in the past too. When I work with people online, sometimes I'll work with one person and I'll notice that they start losing weight faster in their face. Other people will lose it faster in their lower body. Some people do, especially a lot of women, tend to lose the weight very quickly in the midsection. But what happens is we all have troubled spots. So as I mentioned with men, it's usually our midsection, our lower back, and our love handles, obliques, right? For women, it's usually the glutes, hamstrings, and quads. Okay, so I'll work with a guy and I'll work with a woman, and the guy's losing weight in the lower body, no problem, but the woman's struggling in that area, right? And vice versa. The woman's losing weight easier in her abdominal region, but she's struggling in the lower half. Regardless, as long as both people stay on the plan and follow it in, week out, month in, month out, they will get down to the body fat percentage they want to get down to. Because guess what? If you're taking all the body fat off, let's say your lower body, well, there's nowhere else for it to go. Now you've got to start taking it from the upper body. So it's just your genetics, okay? So rather than try to focus on one specific area, try to keep focused on working the body as a whole and trying to burn body fat as a whole. And unfortunately, yeah, you can't choose where that body fat's going to go, right? There's some people, I know when I used to get ready for shows, the first place I'd always lose weight within the first week was always my face. And people knew right away I was getting ready for a show because my face would go in right away. So that was the first place, and that's just my genetics, okay? The second place would be my lower body. My legs would already have striations 3 weeks into a diet. And always for me, the last place to lose fat was my lower back. That was it. And it was always came down to really putting my body through hell for those last 2 to 3 weeks before a show, dropping my carbs to pretty much just like 30 grams per day, doing an hour of cardio. And that's how I got rid of that lower back fat. But that's where I kept it. Okay. But like I said, everyone's different. So just keep chugging away and doing what you're doing. And as long as you're going to the gym on a regular basis, following a clean diet, you'll get there. I promise you, you'll get there. You might not get there as fast as some people, but you will get there. So just stay focused on what you're doing. And I promise you that area will go down. One thing I do want to add, because I do see a lot of people doing this in the gym, and I've talked about this on my Instagram. There's videos of me doing this exercise. I say, do not do this exercise. It's that exercise where people take a plate and they go like this. They go down to the side. Don't do that, because if you start using weights when you're doing your obliques, you know what's going to happen? They're going to grow out this way. So if you've already got body fat on that area, oh God, that's going to make your midsection look even worse. So do not use weights when you're training your abdominal region. Okay. And I say that with the transverse and rectus abdominals too, because what's going to happen, you're going to get a stomach that protrudes. Use body weight when you're training your abs. Do your leg raises, do your knee raises, do your reverse crunches, bicycles, sit-ups, Swiss ball towel crunches. I have all these videos on my Instagram, so you can check them all out. That to me is a great way to build a midsection without adding too much muscle into that area that's going to make you look like you're pregnant or even like a square if you're working your obliques. Sorry, I know I was a little off topic, but I just want to mention that because I do see a lot of people in the gym using resistance for their abdominals or their core, and I would not recommend doing that. Stick to body weight only. Okay. Nick, what's the best split routine for building muscle mass? Well, it'll depend on how many days a week you're in the gym. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're doing a 3-day split, I like to do something like chest and back day 1, shoulders, biceps, and triceps day 2, and we'll do quads, hamstrings, glutes, and abs day 3. If you're in the gym, let's say 5 days a week, I'll give someone day 1 chest, day 2 back, day 3 shoulders, day 4 arms, day 5 legs, and I'll throw in abs on one of those days. Or if someone wants to go a 6th day in the gym, we can just do some abs and cardio. So it's not that one training split's necessarily better than the other. It just depends on how many times you yourself are in the gym each week. I will say this though, if you are a natural lifter, as in someone who is not using anabolic steroids, you're not an enhanced lifter, you're a natural lifter, I would not advise you to train a muscle group more than once a week, okay? And the reason for that is that if you are training a muscle with the utmost amount of intensity, with high volume, what's going to happen is you're going to tear those muscle fibers down. Okay. And in order for those muscles to recover and grow, you need to rest. So if you train your chest on Monday and you go back to the gym on Wednesday and train it again, your chest really hasn't recovered. Okay. Especially if you're training it properly. I know when I train my chest, we'll use chest as an example, it's sore for 3 or 4 days easily because I'm constantly doing demonstrations of exercises for clients so I can feel it. And I'm like, oh man, there's good thing I don't have to train chest today because I just trained it and it's too sore. Same with legs. Okay. Same with arms, same with shoulders. So that's my recommendation. Whatever training split you follow, just make sure that you're putting together a structured program that allows you to train each muscle group once a week. Okay. So it's not that one training split's better than the other, but base it on how many days a week you can realistically go to the gym. And that's important too, because I do see a lot of people putting together these 5 or 6 day training splits. And the reality is they're only in the gym 2, 3 times a week. So if you know yourself and you know you're only going to be in the gym 2 or 3 times a week, put together a well-structured program that'll allow you to do that. I even have some people that sometimes they only can train twice a week. In that case, what I'll usually do is I'll give them an upper body day and a lower body day. Other people, the 3 times a week, as I mentioned, I'll split it up with the chest and back, shoulders, arms, legs, and abs, right? So it really depends on your training split and the amount of time that you have that you can afford to spend in the gym. That's how it's the best training split's going to be. Okay. Nick, what are the key differences between bulking and cutting? Well, I can tell you one similarity. I hate both those terms. I've always hated the terms bulking and cutting. I think they're so stupid. They just sound so like caveman-like, right? I'm going to bulk. I'm going to cut. Listen, here's the thing. You should never be trying to bulk and you should never be trying to cut unless you're training for a bodybuilding show or a physique competition where the goal is to obviously you're getting ready for the stage, so your body fat has to be low. So in a sense, you're going to cut. But what I used to just call it is, oh, it's time to get my body fat down from, let's say, 10% down to 3%. So I'm going to focus on including more cardio, maybe dropping my overall caloric intake, or increasing sometimes my overall caloric intake, depending on how fast or how slow my metabolism is going for that certain prep. Okay. When it came to bulking, I never believed in putting myself or any of my clients into a massive caloric surplus, because if you go into a massive caloric surplus, even if you're training in the gym 6 days a week, you're going to put on fat. You will. Okay. Unless you're a genetic freak that has this crazy metabolism, you will put on fat. And I put myself there because I actually do have a crazy fast metabolism. I really do. For the amount of food I eat each day, I should be obese, right? But I have a fast metabolism, so I have to eat a lot of food. But even myself, I have my limits. And I know that if I go overboard and start indulging in pies and cakes and burgers and fries, I will get fat, right? I will put on love handles. I'll get a gut. I don't want those things. So I make sure that even though I'm not training for a bodybuilding competition, I'm not bulking. I'm just making sure that I'm feeding my body adequately, right? I'm making sure that I'm getting in all those nutrients. And I'll tell you what, it feels a lot better to stay lean year round than try to force feed myself and walk around at 250 pounds, sweating everywhere I go and being uncomfortable, having a hard time bending over to tie my shoes. Like these are problems a lot of these bodybuilders are these just guys in general who are trying to bulk face. It puts a lot of strain on your heart. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't feel good. So why do it? Right. So I've always wanted to stay lean, regardless. And I used to talk about this when I would compete. I never believed in an off season. I always made sure, even after a show, the next day I was right back on my diet, and I slowly start bumping up my macronutrients. I slowly start increasing my carbs, slowly start increasing my fats, because I've been in somewhat of a deficit. If I am in a deficit for that show, like I said, some shows I was in a surplus, but if I was dieting down and I was trying to get leaner and I was having a hard time, I would drop my carbs, drop my fats, usually keep proteins the same. But what I noticed was that once I was doing that, my metabolism slowed down a little bit. So I had to be very careful when the show was over to put those calories back in, right? I didn't want to just go crazy. So I can't tell you, I mean, the obvious difference, bulking, you're consuming more food, cutting, you're consuming less food. Bulking, you're probably not doing much cardio, cutting, you're doing more cardio. But I will tell you that I think the terms are stupid. I don't like using them. And I think if you are, regardless if you're competing or you're just training just to look good and feel good, I don't think you should be trying to bulk or cut. Okay. I think you should find a plan that works well and stay with it. Okay, a plan that's realistic, a plan that you enjoy, and I'm talking both training and diet. Because if the plan is sustainable, it will be successful. If you're dieting too hard and you're dropping your calories too low, you're going to feel grumpy, irritated. You have a low libido. You're going to be, your energy in the gym is going to suffer. And on the other hand, if you're in a caloric surplus, you're probably going to about feel the exact same because it's not comfortable to be in too much of a caloric surplus either. So you don't need to go crazy on bulking. You don't need to go crazy on cutting. Find a plan that works for you and monitor how you're looking and how you're feeling. And this is why I advise a lot of people to take weekly selfies of themselves, not to post on Instagram, but just so that they can gauge and say, okay, this is how I looked October 1st. This is now how I looked October 31st. This is how I looked November 15th. This is how I looked November 30th. So you can see how the body is progressing. And that's how you make your changes and how you are feeling. Okay. Not by these ridiculous, oh, it's time to bulk because it's winter or it's time to cut because it's summer. That's stupid. Okay. All right. A few more questions. Nick, how can you incorporate cardio without sacrificing muscle gains? Okay. So here's the thing with cardio. You're not going to lose muscle if you start doing cardio. Okay. I know a lot of people worry about that. And listen, there's no science backing that. I do cardio. And when I talked about cardio, the type of cardio I do is walking to and from my gym. When I moved into my new place is about a 20-minute walk from my gym. So that's 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back. I'm doing that two, sometimes four times a day. If I have a break in my day, I'll come back here. So I'm getting anywhere from 40 to 80 minutes of cardio. And I am walking pretty fast. Anyone knows me, I am quite a quick walker. So that's my cardio. And I'm not losing muscle, right? If anything, it's helping me because I noticed that my cardiovascular endurance is really good. So that allows me to less rest in the gym. I train with more intensity, as opposed to if my cardiovascular endurance is terrible, well, after I finish a set of squats, I might need to take a 2-minute break. But I can do a set of squats at 315 and go right back into the squat rack again and do it again within a minute. And I attribute that to a lot of my cardiovascular endurance. So it's important to do cardio. And like I said, cardio doesn't have to be on a treadmill, it doesn't have to be on elliptical, it doesn't have to be on a stationary bike. You could just be outside walking. Just get your heart rate up, right? Don't go for a leisure walk. Go for a quick brisk walk. I always tell people if you can, anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes a day, that should be sufficient, right? Obviously, if you're trying to lose a lot of weight, you might have to do more. But if you're happy with where your weight's at, you don't really have to do a crazy amount of cardio. Okay. Because again, I've talked about this is that the more muscle you have from weightlifting, the more calories you're going to burn in the rest of the state anyway. So you're not really at risk of getting fat or gaining fat if you're not doing crazy amounts of cardio. Okay. So to answer that question, you're not going to lose muscle. The only way you're going to lose muscle is if you allow your body to go into a catabolic state for long periods of time. So if you're dieting too extreme, you're going like, let's say, super low calories, under 1,000 calories a day, and you're doing that for long periods of time. Well, guess what? Yeah, you're going to lose muscle because the body is very resilient. The body is very smart. And if you're in a too extreme caloric deficit for a long period of time, it's going to always burn muscle before it burns fat. Why? Because the body goes into survival mode. Your body needs fat to survive. Your body doesn't need muscle to survive. So it's always going to eat the muscle before it eats the fat. Remember that. That's very important. Your body's always going to eat the muscle before it eats the fat. And this is why it makes zero sense to go into these crazy caloric reduction diets because you're going to lose muscle, you're going to lose water, and then you're going to lose fat. So it makes more sense to follow a training split that allows you to eat food, nutritious food, build muscle so you can burn fat in not just a faster state, but a more efficient state and in a safer state. Okay. So that's my recommendation is don't neglect cardio and don't worry about cardio burning muscle. Cardio will not burn muscle unless, of course, you yourself are in a huge caloric deficit. And in that case, the body will go into a catabolic state and start to eat muscle. Okay. But if you're following a good nutritional plan, you can do cardio. That should not impact your gains in the gym whatsoever. In fact, it'll improve your gains in the gym. Okay. Uh, Two more questions. Nick, how much does a person's genetics play in the results they will achieve with their body? Good question. And it's an answer that a lot of people don't like to hear, but here's the thing is that when it comes to your body and how you're going to transform your physique, a lot of that does come down to genetics. Of course, work ethic, right? That's key. But genetics is also key. And so I've always talked about if you have someone, you take two people and one person has superior genetics and the other person has average genetics, but they're both hard workers, the person with the superior genetics will win every time. Will develop a what we deem as a better looking physique or a more muscular physique, right? But here's the thing is you don't allow that to discourage you because I always tell clients is you don't know what your genetic potential is until you've really maxed out all your reserves. And even myself to this day, I've been training for 20 plus years. I don't know what my true genetic potential is because even though I've been training, I feel like I still have more to go. I have more years to put in. Okay. So don't limit yourself psychologically because you go, oh, I just have average genetics. Yeah, you might never be a Michael Jordan, right? You might play basketball every day, but you might never be as good as Michael Jordan, but you'll still be a really good basketball player, right? And same thing when I used to bodybuild. I knew I would never be a professional bodybuilder because I didn't have the genetics. I also didn't have the desire to be a professional bodybuilder, but I knew I didn't have the genetics. I knew I didn't have the structure because even after years of competing, I would see my physique and say, yeah, it looks good. At an amateur level, it looks great. But even if I take all the steroids under the sun, I'm not going to be able to compete at a professional level. But I can coach people. And I can coach people who maybe just want to do one show, or maybe someone just wants to do a couple of shows. They don't care about a pro card. Or maybe someone just wants to get ready for their wedding, beach vacation, or lifestyle. That's it. And that's why I coach people like that. So don't limit yourself because of your genetics. But if you're asking me the truth, I will tell you that if you look at the Mr. Olympia, those are the best bodybuilders in the world. Every guy on that stage is a genetic freak. And what separates first from third, in my opinion, it's that you've got three freaks up there who are all genetic freaks, but number one has got it up here. Number one has got that discipline to stay on track and can have that laser focus. And that's really what separates one from two and three, right? But when you're talking about what separates one from 15, well, that's genetics. And even though they're all genetic freaks, number one's going to be more of a genetic freak than number 15. Okay. So genetics do play a role. They do. Like I talked about with the person who asked me about the love handles, you don't get to choose your genetics, which means you don't get to choose where you lose fat first. You don't get to choose which area of your bodies that you put on muscle faster than others. Those are just your genetics. But if you learn to work with your genetics as opposed to against your genetics, and you don't set limitations on yourself because of your genetics, you're going to achieve results that a lot of people never get to because up here, they've already set a limitation. So they're like, nope, that's as high as I can go. But if you think, no, I can go higher. I'm not going to be a Ronnie Coleman, but I can still build a nice chest. I can still build a nice set of abs. I can still build big defined biceps, right? Or, for women, a nice butt, whatever you're looking for, you can still do it. Okay. So don't limit yourself because you have average genetics. Work with your genetics. Don't work against them. All right. Last question. Nick, how important is the mind to muscle connection for building muscle? I've heard you use this term, but I'm not exactly sure what it means. Yeah, good question. So the mind to muscle connection is crucial. Absolutely is. And this is going to sound creepy, but anyone who works with me in person knows I like to touch a lot. Okay. And I don't touch people inappropriately, but I do like to touch a lot. And what I'm touching is to make sure that I feel the proper muscles contracting. So if I have a client doing a lat pull down, my hands are on that client's lats. I want to feel those lats contracting. If I can't feel the lats contracting, how is my client supposed to feel those lats contracting? So in order to get a mind to muscle connection, I do a lot of touching with my clients. Someone's doing a bicep curl. My hands are on their biceps and I say, I need you to squeeze this as you come up. And a lot of people go, I can't do that. I'm like, just keep focusing on my fingers and try to squeeze with that bicep as hard as you can. And eventually with repetitions, they get it. And obviously some muscle groups are harder to contract with others. Like for example, I mentioned the back. It's very hard to establish a mind to muscle connection with the back because we can't see those muscles. Usually people are able to establish a stronger mind to muscle connection with the muscles they can see. if they're training their chest, let's say they're doing an incline dumbbell press, they see it in the mirror, it's easier to contract those muscles, right? Biceps, another easy one. Triceps, yeah. But sometimes it's really hard when someone's doing, let's say, a barbell back squat to really try to focus on squeezing their glutes and their hamstrings because an exercise like that is a quad dominant exercise. So many times when I'm working with people, let's say in a squat rack, no, I'm not touching their butt, but I am telling them to sit on their heels and try to focus on shifting their weight backwards. Okay. Because that's going to allow them to actually engage more hamstring and glute activation. Okay. So the mind to muscle connection is huge. And if you're someone who's in the gym and you're just doing, let's say, dumbbell curls, and you're watching the TV at the gym, or you're talking to your buddy on a phone while you're doing curls, you're not going to get the most out of the exercise because you're not recruiting muscle fibers to that area. You need to have those motor neurons, right? And how do we do that? Through here. This tells this to move, right? If I do this, well, that's an action my brain is telling my arm to move up. Right? So that mind to muscle connection is huge. And it's one that should not be neglected. And this is why I tell people when you're in the gym, it's important to focus on what you're doing. Not be having a conversation about how much you made in the stock market last week or what your place is worth or, your girlfriend, problems with your girlfriend, problems with your boyfriend. That's time for go for a coffee, go for a drink. But when you're in the gym, you should be laser focused on what you're trying to do because if you're not, A, you could get injured, and B, you're not going to really get the most out of your workout. And every time I step foot in the gym, I want to get the most out of each and every workout. I'm only going to be there for 40, 45 minutes. So I want to get the most, and I can really give my undivided attention to what I'm doing. Okay. And that's important because if you can do that, you're going to maximize your results. Okay. So just remember that mind to muscle connection is huge. And if you don't have it, don't worry, it'll come. Just really try to focus on what you're doing. Try to focus, let's say with the biceps, you want your biceps to be bigger, let's say, for example. So visualize pumping blood into that muscle with the weight. Visualize. Don't think about problems you're having in your relationship or problems you're having with your career. Think about that muscle. Put all your energy into that muscle. That's how you're going to establish a mind to muscle connection. And once you have it, you'll never lose it. Okay. But like I said, some muscles it's easier to have to establish than others, right? But it can be done with all the muscles. You just have to focus. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, October the 21st. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel, my in-house coaching business, my online coaching business. I really, truly do appreciate all the support. Thank you all once again and have a fantastic week. Bye for now.